Today's the day we tie it all together. In previous tutorial videos, we talked about the ControlNet preprocessor, which allows us to take different types of data from an image, those structural things that we can use to help create a new image. For instance, the outline of it, or the depth map, which creates a more three-dimensional impression. And something we didn't really go over, but maybe just briefly, the DW preprocessor, which allows us to create human type poses and structures, which we're going to use this time, because now we're going to talk about one specific idea or concept that would require us to try to use all these things together. So this workflow is going to be a little bit bigger than the normal ones. I would consider it still intermediate, but maybe some others might consider it advanced. But we're taking three different types of things we want to do and putting them all together to create something new. But we always should start from the base, which is what we're going to do here. We'll just create this flux workflow that you're all familiar with. Again, sometimes I just use this one because I want the full thing. I don't use the quantized GGUF version, but nonetheless, you can use either one to do this. It's not like it's only this way that you can do it. This is the Basic Flux Workflow. I'm going to put down the parameters I like the most on here. For right now, I'm going to lower it to 15, but we're going to have to increase that. One of the things that you're going to realize as the more and more you add more types of information that the workflow needs to understand, the more and more you need to have more steps for it to actually put it all together, which makes sense if you think about it. Let's go ahead and just run it right now. I'm just running it to verify everything works, to create like a custom character. That's what we're trying to create today, right? The first thing we want to do is actually, well, just talk about the basis of that character sheet thing. Now you can get your own, like you can get some preloaded ones. In fact, this one right here is something I made myself, and including this portrait, which I'm going to use today for the PuLID thing. I made both of these. This is a flux model. This is a flux model as well. And I made it with a simple workflow like this. I mean, I could easily just dump this into here and show you that. But again, the idea is that I want to show you how to do it. Like, that's the whole purpose of my tutorials, is to actually show you how to do it, not just give you a bunch of workflows. Even though these workflows will be available on the Patreon. So the Patreon will be in the description. But I also like to show you how it's done, mainly because this is how you can understand how to use it, but also expand upon it to get some more creativity that, you know, you can make a workflow your own. So the basic way you just make these things, and it's kind of hit or miss. It's not perfect every time. But when you're making a workflow like this, that to create a character sheet, right? It really doesn't matter what it is, because we're going to run it through the DW processor. But to be able to create those things yourself, if you don't feel like, or if you want something unique for whatever reason, it's basically just saying, you know, describing what they are. It's a blonde woman with a, let me get forward here too, white t-shirt and jeans. One of the things I always make sure I do when I'm trying to do these types of sheets, if I want a full body view of something, make sure you talk about their feet. Whether you're saying they're barefoot, whether you're saying they're wearing jeans, make sure you talk about their feet. If you don't talk about their feet, then it might come across as like, oh, wait a minute. It's funny how this is popped up, because this is a zero prompt right here. Beforehand, I got that little weird tiger thing. This time I got this thing. I was like, well, I don't know where this stuff comes from. But anyways, a blonde woman with a white t-shirt and jeans, wearing sneakers on a plain white background, viewed from multiple angles. And then you describe those angles. So we're looking for 3 poses, and there's so many ways you can say this, but I try to use very specific words, like anterior view, and sometimes I do this where I just, because I believe the underscores and the one still work for flux just as it works for the stable diffusion thing, but it keeps it as, you know, the one word, one anterior view, one side profile view, oop, and then one posterior view. Now, my canvas is a bit strange for this type of thing because this isn't a big canvas, 1024, and it's a square canvas at that. Usually when you're trying to create something like this, it'd probably be better off if you're trying to do it on a rectangular canvas, but you might just get it. So you'll notice it's fuzzy. It's not exactly the points of view that I wanted, but you can keep rerunning it. If you want it to stop being fuzzy, you know, you definitely got to up this thing. One of the things that makes these things fuzzy like this too in Flux is also that it's not a lot of information, because I've used 1024 on many different things, right, before, and what we're describing is a character sheet, the plain white background and all this kind of stuff. I've noticed that there's a tendency for when it's a lot of like minimal information, you need higher steps to actually make it to come out right. But you can see, like, you can just keep running this over and over again, up these steps a bit more. Might even have to up it to 30. But at lower resolution, minimal items or objects in your scene, you're going to notice that you need higher amount of steps to get the resolution to come out. It's just the way it is for whatever reason. Because you saw the very first image that had no prompt had a good amount of detail. So, at any rate, you get the idea. You keep running this over and over again. You can try to tweak those. The one thing that I think you would probably need to tweak the most is probably the wording of the different directional or different angles. That usually, I believe, will have the most significant impact, but it's hard to tell. So, like, see, this one has two side angles and one rear view. The other one is the frontal view. Being that we're only going to use this to capture the pose, unless you do really care about the clothing, and I'll show you how that actually can be a thing. You can utilize that to create something really cool if you actually think about that. But if you don't care about anything but exactly the pose, there's plenty of like pose sheets out there that you can just get like from a Google search. This is okay. It's not a complete rear view on this one, but you get kind of it. You got the profile, you got the frontal view. This is probably the best one we have so far. Sometimes I would do this in batches of 3 to make it like a lot faster to get the result I want, but you guys get the idea. At any rate, this is how you get your pose sheet. You're gonna need this for when we go back to the ControlNet thing. So let's create the ControlNet workflow really quick. Load image. See, we have one right here. I created this one too. And we're just gonna do a preview image here. And we're gonna go with the DW pose one. Make sure your resolution matches the resolution of your image, because again, that's gonna help you in the long run. And I am gonna take my pre-made one that I already made, this one right here, and drop it into here. We're not actually gonna use this right here. However, we can still use this thing right here if we want that to be the final look. So we have that. We need to control that model, and then we need apply control. We're not going to run any of this just yet, because we also need the other part of this. So we have two parts right now, right? One overall thing that determines what everything looks like, which is the flux model, right? And then from the previous tutorial, we need the PuLID. We need the special one that's PuLID flux, apply PuLID flux. You're gonna need this one for using a flux model, so make sure you have this and you're not just using the regular apply PuLID. So this one is your regular model, which is gonna be this right here. We'll add that in at one point, and then let's just add everything else that we need in here just by drag and drop it. I'm not drag and dropping, but like this right here won't work unless you actually use the flux thing. This one right here, I believe, works either way, whether you use the flux one or not. This will be the faces. It keeps reloading this because this is the last, I think, last input I had. And we're gonna drop the face thing. I don't think I would need to write a tutorial about how to make a portrait, because you can literally just say portrait or you say photo if you want it to be really realistic. As you can see, I'm not gonna use something that's completely photorealistic. It's actually kind of painterly, but I like this when I made it, so that's why I'm using it. Okay, so with the exception of this part and this part, everything's pretty much connected. I'm gonna lower this to 7.5 so when we use it, it won't be all what it is. And I'm gonna do the same thing on this one. Let's lower this down. Yeah, we'll lower this. Make it 70. Matter of fact, make the other one 70 too. Let's just start there. I don't want too much of anything on that. So we got 3 different workflows that we need to combine, and I'm also gonna put an upscale part on this as well. So you can see how when you break them down, right? They're actually quite simple. They're not really that complicated, but tying them together takes awareness of what you're doing first. First thing I want to do is I want to connect this thing. I want to make sure that, because we're making a custom character, and how we know it's custom character is it has the face we want, right? So the first thing I would try to tie in is this part right here. Okay, doesn't take a lot of thought. Take this model, connect it to this, and take this part right now that it's been disconnected, since we did that, and connect it here. That's it. That right there by itself connects the PuLID to everything else. And I'm just gonna keep them like separated so that way you can at least see what's going on. All right, so taking that, using the PuLID, we're gonna take that same process of what we just did without using this. We'll just cancel this out really quick, or at least bypass it. I don't think it's gonna run anything but that anyways, but let's just run this, make sure it goes through, comes out on the other side, get there, then we'll show an image that supposedly will have this face on it. The character sheet will have this face character on top of it. That, I believe, does look like her. Let's bring her over a little bit so we can at least make a good clear comparison. Yeah, looks similar to her, right? I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it does look similar. It's another reason why we use the upscaling thing, but I do say it looks similar. So we got that part. The PuLID is a part of it. Now reactivate this. However, I want to turn off all of this really quick. There is actually a thing you can use for this, and this is the reason why people group stuff sometimes, and we'll talk about that in the tips and tricks video that I'll do. But anyways, let's just really quickly, I'm just gonna run this. It's not gonna take that long. It's just a preprocessor thing, and while that's running, we're gonna connect this because this is obvious that this goes to that, and this image will go here. All right, so as you can see, the poses from this image here, this is what we're going to be using. This part, the ControlNet part, we need to connect in all this. So this is probably the trickier part of this. I wouldn't say it's not really like complicated or anything, but you just got to remember the thing we talked about, the case sampler. At the end of all of this, everything has to run through the case sampler, but that's the last thing you want it to do. Remember, you're loading up this stuff, and then you're loading up this stuff, and then you're melding them together with the case sampler. That's the concept. So this will go through here. This will go through here. That's our last thing that we're loading up into that, right? You notice that we don't need the model to go through the ControlNet, so don't even worry about that part. It's just connected already. However, we do need the conditioning to go through here too. Boom, boom, and then of course you always need to be able to use your variation something encoder because I can't remember what that A means, but that's it. As you can see, it's not really that complicated, right? In this part, and you see the ControlNet parts are running now. In this part, the only thing I really want to show that we're getting successful is that it's adhering to this pose model, because that's the whole purpose of the ControlNet in this workflow. It's just to get it to make sure that they're having this orientation so you can see each point of view, because you're making a character sheet, right? You want to see them from different directions. Now again, you can use so many different types of character sheets. What makes it capable of adhering to your pose sheet is two things. One, what you say down here, make sure you describe it as well as look at it in the way that it's being depicted, but also how strong you have the weight on it. Right now we got about 70%. Right? Realize that we also have a whole bunch of other things that have a percentage too. Now granted, PuLID is just really focusing on the face. However, if the PuLID is strong enough, it will change the direction of the face too. So keep that in mind, because it's gonna want to look at the face. That's what PuLID wants to do, period. Getting this right blend of what's what and who has, I guess, not dominion, but who has the priority is kind of what we're getting at with the PuLID part way back here. I got the face down here, but it's supposed to be over here. The PuLID part over here. And then you want to have a certain amount of weight for this, which is the pose. But then there's also consideration of what your description is. Because right now, yes, we said in both t-shirt and jeans. On this one, they're barefoot. On this one, on our description, they're wearing sneakers. So that's why I put sneakers on them. Think about how all of this, in its own way, has weight on what's going to be produced by the case sampler. All of it has a little bit of weight that it's dictating about what's important. Okay, so we got it looking to the right, the other one looking behind, and the other one looking towards us. Now, does it look like the character we talked about? Kinda, sorta, but not exactly. I feel like we can get a little bit more of her in there. So we should probably increase the PuLID, which is what we're gonna do. Ooh, not 89. We'll just go to 80. Increase it by 10 on PuLID. Alright, so let's move. I'm gonna move this back to just, I want to keep everything separated so you see what they are. And when the one that I'm gonna put on Patreon, I'm gonna pretty much organize it in groups like that too, and separate them, label them up like that. And I want to change wearing a leather jacket and black boots, black riding boots. How about that? And I'll let it determine what it wants to determine for what she has on her legs. I'm not even gonna dictate anything about that. Let's just do it that way. Run it again. All right, so cool. I got the PuLID probably relatively low, but I also feel like that doesn't really matter. And why do I say that doesn't really matter? Because at the end of all this, I still want to upscale. I stand by the idea that upscaling really helps. We're not even gonna go that far. It's gonna look 1.3 or something, 30% increase, because you already filled out all of that part of the image, right? Let's bring this one out. Okay, so this is what we're gonna be upscaling this specific image. And think about this too, right? So you're thinking like, well, how far back do I have to go to be able to get everything that I was looking for beforehand, right? You don't have to go through this if you don't want to. You really don't. In fact, you have a little bit more leeway with how it comes about. You don't have to go that far back. You can go right here. I don't always think it's important to go through every single process, especially when you're trying to pull it all together. Go watch the outpainting tutorial about how to blend it all together, how to not have those seams. It's the same thing with this. And the great thing about when you're doing the character models is, guess where you pull the model from? Right here, right there. You don't pull it from here because guess what? You get the PuLID right back. That's the beauty of this. That's why I say upscale stuff. Don't just do this thing where you're constantly trying to get the greatest look from this part. It'll usually stick to it depending on how you have your denoise. If you don't go too high on this, right? Let's say the 65 on this, right? If you don't go too high on this, it'll stick to the plan you made. Your plan was to go and make it look like this, right? Stick to the plan. Especially if you like the face a little bit. So boom, let's do that. And because we have it fixed already, it's just gonna start from here. It's only 15 steps. The more and more you do this type of process where you actually work on building it and seeing where stuff comes from and where the information pulls, the better you'll get at it. It's just like the idea of being a programmer or a painter, all this kind of stuff. You got to use your tools to get better at them. If you always just do the workflow approach where you always just download a workflow and don't actually understand how it works, and you'll never really get it. You're just waiting on somebody else to do the magic for you. I'm trying to show you how to be the magician and do the tricks themselves. So boom. Now, more detail in her face. Guess what she looks like? Guess what she looks more like now? She looks more like this character. She needs a little bit of a tan, but literally you can just say that. You can just say, you just make her more tan, you know? Bleach blonde with a tan. And look how more refined the leather is and the boots and all this kind of stuff, right? That's the power of upscaling. I talked about a little bit more too. The idea of upscaling is not just about making it bigger. Literally, there's more details on here. And most of that is because I'm not telling it to focus. See, it's not focused on building the pose. The pose has already been made. It's not focused on any of this information. Now, it's just literally just, let's talk about the leather. This is a pretty interesting thing that you can do with a lot of different characters. I have made some characters that are not so realistic as far as like, you know, making like a cat character, a dog character. The only problem with those characters is that it's harder for me to do what I want to do, which is a more advanced topic, is doing the thing where I want to get them to talk, right? And I want to do it based on AI, but AI facial recognition is based upon humans. So this is basically the entire workflow. You can see how this is really a really cool way of making characters. There's also another part to this though, which is beyond simply what we're doing here. And that's, well, we have all these different things, right? So how do we put them where we want to put them? Because obviously we don't just want to create a bunch of empty character sheets. We want to use these things to put them in different spaces and places so we can use them as repeat characters. Well, that is another tutorial that will be coming up. I think I've said enough in this one tutorial, and this is a lot of stuff to digest, and it might be a little bit of a mess. But you can see how it can be done, and you see the separate sections for everything. Let me pull this one back here where it belongs. Your PuLID section, your character sheet type of section, or at least what the actual character sheet is supposed to look like, which is your ControlNet section. Let me put this on top, make the lines look better, right? That section, and your regular, the first part, not including the upscale, which is all of this, your regular flux workflow with the model way back here, but all of this in the middle, plus your upscale. It's just really a whole bunch of workflows we already talked about tied in together. That's it. I hope this was informative. I hope you guys can get really creative about this. Maybe do that thing I said before. See what happens when you change this to the line art thing. Hell, see what happens when you change it to the depth map. Maybe something else cool will pop up too. But remember that making sure you get the poses is the purpose of doing this character sheet. That's why I use the pose one. If you like this video, please like and subscribe so you can see more stuff that I release. Hop on the Patreon if you want to see some other things that I'm doing that are probably a little bit more advanced than this stuff. And yeah, have fun. Have a great day.